Welcome to First Sleep Aid, calm stories to help you unwind, learn, and fall asleep. From true crime to curious facts and thoughtful ideas, always softly spoken. Subscribe now and take a deep breath. You're in good hands.
Today, we're starting a really fascinating deep dive. It's based on some information you shared, actually, about a real-life mystery from Norway back in 1970.
That's right. A case that's, well, still unsolved, remarkably, and just continues to capture people's imagination.
It really does. We've got this collection of details, clues surrounding an unidentified woman and the really strange circumstances of her death. So our mission today is to sort of sift through all these facts, the theories, and try to understand the layers of this enigma.
And what makes it so compelling, I think, is exactly that, how long it's lasted. Decades later, the core questions are still there, unanswered. It
Mhm.
really highlights how certain stories just grab hold of us, makes us look beyond what we know for sure.
Okay, so let's start by setting the scene. It's November 29th, 1970. We're outside Bergen, Norway, in a place called Isdalen,
Which translates to Ice Valley.
Ice Valley. And adding to that sort of somber feel, locals apparently also called this area Death Valley.
Yeah, not exactly inviting. It's this steep, wooded canyon east of Bergen.
And Death Valley wasn't just a name, right? It had this
Yeah.
history, whispers of, well, witch burnings centuries ago, and even more recently, suicides.
Exactly. A place with a bit of a dark reputation already.
So it's in this quite foreboding spot that a father and his two young daughters are out hiking. It's a misty morning.
And they make a discovery that basically kickstarts this whole decades-long mystery.
They wander just a bit off the main path, maybe 20 meters or so, near these rocky slopes. And there, they find something completely unexpected.
A woman's body. Burn.
Yeah. And the location itself, as you said, Ice Valley, Death Valley,
Yeah.
that feels significant from the get-go, doesn't it?
It really does. It immediately adds this layer of unease, maybe. Like this wasn't just some random spot. It already felt kind of charged.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the initial strangeness of what they saw is, well, it's quite arresting. The woman's lying on her back,
Right.
burned so badly she's unrecognizable,
Mm.
and her arms are positioned rigidly at her sides.
Which is odd in itself.
Very odd. And scattered around her are these items: melted plastic bottles, what's left of an umbrella, a watch that stopped, a ring but removed from her finger.
Placed beside her.
Yeah, placed beside her. And fragments of charred clothing.
But key things are missing.
Exactly. No hiking boots, which you'd expect. No ID, no purse, nothing like that.
And the fire itself was strange.
Extremely. No sign of a campfire,
Yeah.
no shelter built, no matches found nearby. It was almost described as if the fire came from within her somehow.
That's chilling.
And then there's this. Labels meticulously cut out of her clothes, markings scrubbed off her belongings.
Deliberate erasure.
Completely.
Yeah.
Even her last meal, apparently just eggs and milk, seemed so starkly simple compared to everything else going on at the scene.
It's that contrast, isn't it? The intense destruction of the body, but then these oddly preserved or partially preserved items around her.
Right.
And the deliberate removal of anything that could identify her. It shouts intention. Someone wanted her to be anonymous.
So this is where the story really takes off. The press quickly calls her the Isdal Woman.
A name born out of mystery.
Exactly. And despite all the efforts, police appeals, forensic sketches circulated showing a woman with these quite distinct high cheekbones, dark eyes.
Nobody came forward. No one claimed her.
No one.
Yeah.
And the deeper the police dug, the more it looked like this wasn't just some tragic accident or even straightforward murder.
It felt like something else.
It felt like a disappearance by design, like she had lived a life deliberately in the shadows, aiming for anonymity.
And that's what we want to unpack today, right? Not just what happened, but why. Why such secrecy? Why the effort to vanish, even in death?
Precisely. It's not just a whodunit, it's a who was she? And maybe even, did she want to disappear? That lack of identity is so central.
It forces you to question everything about her life, not just her death.
Okay, let's go back to that discovery point, Isdalen, this
Yeah.
Death Valley. We mentioned the history, the suicides. Even experienced hikers were cautious there. It really sets an ominous stage.
It does. The place itself had this built-in sense of unease. Finding a body there, especially in these circumstances, would have felt doubly shocking, doubly wrong.
And just thinking about Arnrud and his daughters, wandering just 20 meters off the path, and suddenly seeing what they first thought was a mannequin.
Mannequin, wow.
Yeah, because the body was in such an unnatural pose. It speaks volumes about how jarring that sight must have been.
It really does. A human body usually doesn't look like an object unless something is profoundly wrong with the scene.
She was on her back, legs out straight. But her arms,
Yeah.
they were bent sharply at the elbows, kind of raised stiffly above her.
That arm position is key, isn't it? Investigators noted that right away. It's not typical for fire victims,
Not at all. Usually you see more of a protective, flexed posture. This looked posed.
suggesting maybe post-mortem manipulation or something that fixed her limbs in that position.
Exactly. And the fire itself, so specific, intense burning on her torso and face, but her back was relatively untouched. And her skin was blackened, not turned to ash. Suggests a very specific kind of burning, maybe rapid.
Localized and intense, that points away from an accidental spreading fire and more towards something focused, maybe an accelerant applied directly.
Could be. And then you have that almost surreal collection of items nearby, seemingly undisturbed.
Right, the half-melted bottle, the scorched watch with the strap intact.
Jewelry, the ring and wristwatch placed beside her, not on her.
That's very deliberate.
An unopened packed lunch.
Yeah.
A singed fur hat. It's just a bizarre mix.
It really is perplexing. How do these things survive relatively unscathed if the fire was hot enough to burn a body so severely?
It raises questions about the timeline, doesn't it?
Right.
Or maybe the items were placed there afterwards.
It's possible. And the lack of any obvious fire starter is baffling, too.
Totally. No campfire signs, no matches, no cans that might have held fuel. How do you get such an intense fire without leaving a trace of how it started?
That's one of the core mysteries. It fuels all sorts of speculation.
And right from the start, those removed labels and scrubbed markings. Such a clear sign of intentional erasure.
Someone went to extraordinary lengths. It wasn't just about hiding the cause of death. It was about obliterating her identity, severing all ties.
Even the simple last meal eggs and milk seems almost deliberately unremarkable against this backdrop of extreme mystery.
It's a poignant detail, isn't it? That little glimpse of maybe an ordinary moment before such an extraordinary and violent end. The disconnect is stark.
So, okay, the body is burned almost beyond recognition, but what wasn't destroyed told investigators a lot. That arm position, as we said, strongly suggesting posing.
Yes, that's a key piece pointing towards intentional manipulation. It deviates so much from typical fire deaths.
And despite the damage, they could still make out some features. Strong jawline, high cheekbones, hints of dark hair.
Enough for those initial sketches.
Right, and estimates put her age between, say, 25 and 40. Maybe Southern or Eastern European origin, based on those fleeting clues.
Just hints, though. Nothing solid. And it just widens the mystery, really. Suggests a life that could have spanned different places, different cultures.
And that fire. The fact it seems so concentrated, so controlled, not like a random blaze.
No, it implies a targeted use of something, maybe an accelerant, rather than just a campfire getting out of hand. That suggests premeditation.
Let's just quickly list those items found right near her again. Melted water bottle, blackened spoon tip, the wrapped lunch, scorched fur hat, a single earring removed.
Also placed beside her? Or just found nearby?
I think just found nearby, that one. A St. Halvard liqueur bottle and the burned remains of a small notebook, maybe passport-sized.
Each item feels like it should be a clue, but they're all so ambiguous.
Especially that detail of the removed jewelry, the ring and watch placed beside her. That feels particularly unsettling, doesn't it? So intentional.
Highly intentional, very atypical for accidents or most suicides involving fire. It suggests a conscious act, maybe symbolic, maybe just practical for whoever did it.
And crucially, no signs of a struggle.
Right. No blood, no torn clothes, no drag marks found.
Which suggests either it all happened right there with her somehow incapacitated, or she arrived there after being incapacitated elsewhere.
Exactly, no sign of resistance.
And we have to keep coming back to the meticulous removal of all identifying marks. Labels cut from clothes, the bottle, any bags, and even filing the markings off her dentures.
That level of detail is astonishing. It's like they weren't just trying to hide her identity, they were trying to completely erase her existence from the record.
But despite all that, they did get usable fingerprints.
Which you'd think would be a breakthrough.
You would, but incredibly, no match in any databases, national or international.
Which is pretty amazing for 1970, even then.
And her dental work, very high quality. Gold porcelain crowns, suggesting good care, probably in Central or Western Europe. Germany, Switzerland, France were mentioned as possibilities.
Another strong lead, seemingly.
But again, nothing. No dentist ever recognized the work or came forward. No country claimed her.
It's incredibly frustrating. These distinctive markers that should lead somewhere just evaporate. It shows how effective her anonymity or the efforts to make her anonymous really were.
And the list of what wasn't there is just as telling. No ID, no phone, no wallet, no backpack or luggage at the scene.
All the things we use to define ourselves and move through the world, their absence is almost deafening.
It points to someone who wasn't just unprepared or caught off guard.
Hmm.
It suggests a deliberate shedding of identity.
Either by her or by someone else.
So the early conclusion was inescapable. She wasn't homeless, wasn't unprepared, wasn't just carelessly abandoned. This was intentional removal from the record.
Precisely. All the initial evidence points to a calculated effort to make her vanish without a trace, leaving just a void. The big question then becomes, why? What requires such extreme measures?
Okay, let's shift to the initial police questions. Suicide was considered, briefly, right.
Yes, it's often an initial thought in unattended deaths, but it was dismissed pretty quickly here. The scene was just too curated, too staged. The removed labels, the body position, the controlled fire, it just didn't fit the profile of a typical suicide, especially not one carried out in that manner.
Makes sense. And what else did they find nearby, sort of in the immediate vicinity?
Some burned paper fragments, a melted plastic bag, scorched bread crusts, and a nearly empty blister pack of sleeping pills.
Ah, the sleeping pills. That's significant.
Very. And also, crucially, almost no discernible footprints around the scene.
No footprints. On what kind of ground?
Reports vary, but it wasn't hard rock everywhere.
Yeah.
You'd expect some sign of movement, especially if someone carried her there or if she walked there herself and then prepared the scene.
That's incredibly eerie. Suggests extreme care was taken, or maybe the weather played a role, or something else entirely.
Exactly. It adds another layer of peculiarity.
Inspector Havoc, one of the lead investigators, had a quote early on that really sums it up, didn't he?
He did. He said something like, "It was all wrong. Whoever brought her there wanted her to disappear."
That just cuts right to the heart of it. The immediate sense that this was deliberate concealment.
Yes, that became the guiding principle. This wasn't an accident. It was an erasure.
They considered the idea of postmortem staging, right?
Yeesh.
Maybe using that liqueur bottle as an accelerant container.
They did, trying to make sense of the fire without matches, but it was just a theory trying to fit the pieces. The lack of a definite ignition source remained a huge problem.
And we can't forget the timing, 1970. The Cold War.
Absolutely. That context loomed large. Norway's strategic position meant espionage was immediately considered as a possibility. A mysterious death with erased identity. It fits certain narratives.
But despite a national alert circulating her description, those sketches, nothing. No matching missing person reports anywhere.
It's as if she just materialized in Isdal and vanished again without anyone noticing she was gone from wherever she came from. It highlights just how unknown she was.
So, the autopsy. What did that reveal?
Some crucial details. Cause of death was carbon monoxide poisoning. Soot in her lungs.
Meaning she was alive when the fire started.
Yes. But, and this is critical, she likely wasn't conscious, they found very high levels of phenobarbital, a barbiturate, in her system.
Sleeping pills.
Yes, along with remnants of other sleeping pills in her stomach. The estimate was she'd consumed at least 50 pills.
50. Wow. That's
A lethal dose, potentially, even without the fire.
So this raises a massive question, doesn't it? Did she take them herself, intending suicide? Or were they given to her?
Exactly. That's the crucial ambiguity. Suicide or murder disguised as suicide or incapacitation before the fire was set. We just don't know how those pills got into her system.
It's a major fork in the road for the investigation.
Absolutely. And the dental work, we mentioned it before, high quality gold and porcelain, that rare zinc chloride cement, possibly from Germany, Switzerland, France.
A strong geographical pointer.
Should have been. But again, no matches. No dentist recognized it. Another dead end.
And the fingerprints? Usable prints, but no matches anywhere in the available databases, including Visa and Customs.
Which, in 1970, is quite remarkable for someone who had clearly traveled. It suggests a deliberate avoidance of official identification systems throughout her travels.
What else did forensics find? Anything about her lifestyle?
Well, things like well-trimmed nails, hands showing no signs of manual labor, well-developed leg muscles, maybe from skiing or dancing. She was physically fit, healthy, well-nourished, no scars, no tattoos, no birthmarks, no signs of childbirth. Her overall impression was of someone, well, maybe educated, definitely cared for.
But without a name, these are just fragments, aren't they? Impressions without context.
Precisely. useless for actual identification.
And importantly, no signs of sexual assault or defensive wounds.
Correct. Which feeds back into the idea of incapacitation before death or a very controlled event.
So the autopsy basically confirmed what the scene suggested. A profound effort had been made to make this body, this person, vanish.
Yes. The question wasn't just how she died, but who went to such lengths to ensure she couldn't be identified.
So at this stage, what were the main possibilities? Staged suicide seemed unlikely, given the methods.
Very unlikely. Murder disguised as suicide. That was definitely on the table.
Or maybe something else. A life deliberately engineered to be untraceable, ending in a way that maintained that untraceability.
That third possibility, the idea of a life lived entirely off the grid, ending in a way consistent with that secrecy, became increasingly compelling as the investigation went on.
Okay, so the investigation hits these walls.
Yeah.
Then comes a breakthrough, right? The suitcases.
Yes, a major turning point, based on a claim check stub found among the burned notebook fragments near the body.
Right, that little detail.
They found 2 locked, unmarked suitcases stored at the Bergen railway station's luggage office.
Unmarked, of course. Consistent, what was inside.
The first case held neatly folded clothes, simple but stylish, and again, all labels meticulously removed.
Of course. Anything else?
Yes, a tube of prescription eczema cream, label removed, non-prescription eyeglasses, like for disguise, a clean comb and brush set, 2 wigs wrapped up.
Wigs. Okay, that points strongly towards disguise.
Definitely. Also theatrical makeup, some Norwegian currency, and tea biscuits. A practical mix, but with clear elements of potential disguise.
And a second suitcase.
Even more intriguing, a notebook filled with what looked like coded entries, just letters and numbers.
A coded notebook. We'll come back to that.
Also, a pair of unworn rubber boots. A sewing kit, but oddly, without any thread.
Strange.
A spoon identical to the burned spoon tip found at the scene.
Linking the cases directly to her.
Yes. And a map, but with sections carefully torn out.
Torn out, not just folded. Interesting. What did that suggest?
Maybe interest in specific areas while wanting to obscure others, or maybe just removing irrelevant parts. Hard to say for sure.
But again, that recurring theme. Removed labels everywhere. It feels less like someone's personal history and more like an assembled kit. A kit for creating personas.
Exactly. It felt like a life curated, not lived organically, assembled for a purpose.
But then, a tiny clue. Almost missed.
The plastic bag, tucked away in a hidden pocket from an Italian shoe store.
Seems insignificant, but it cracked the case open, didn't it?
It did. It gave them a specific location to check outside Bergen. It led them to Stavanger.
And in Stavanger.
Shopkeepers at that shoe store remembered her. They described this tall, elegant, dark-haired woman, spoke broken English but fluent French.
Fluent French.
She bought stylish boots, paid cash, and crucially, they remembered she'd stayed at a local hotel.
Under a different name, presumably.
Under a different name. This was the first real crack in the facade, confirmation of travel under multiple identities.
So the suitcases solidified what the scene hinted at.
Yeah.
She lived under aliases. Anonymity wasn't just at her death, it was her way of life.
Undeniable proof. It shifted the investigation towards understanding the why behind this elaborate, systematic deception.
And that notebook, the one with the codes.
They eventually deciphered it. The random-seeming letters and numbers weren't random at all.
What were they?
They corresponded precisely to hotel names, check-in and check-out dates, and the cities she'd visited. Like O29P meant Oslo, stayed from the 29th, at a hotel starting with P.
Wow. A meticulous, coded itinerary that's sophisticated.
Very. A careful, intentional system for tracking her own movements while keeping them hidden. It suggests discipline, maybe even training.
So you put it all together. The wigs, the removed labels, the hotel trail under aliases, this coded notebook. It starts to feel less like simple secrecy and more like tradecraft.
That's exactly the word that comes to mind. It suggests a level of operational security, of practiced discipline in living a fabricated life.
Which brings us back to those darker questions. Who needs to live like this? Why so many disguises? And why the burning? Why end up like that after all that effort to be invisible? The contradictions are baffling.
They really are. The extreme measures taken to conceal her identity make the violent, anonymous death even more perplexing. What went wrong?
The conclusion from the suitcases seems clear. She had been deliberately erasing herself, creating new identities, long before she ended up in Isdal.
Yes, the anonymity wasn't just a reaction to her death. It was an ingrained part of her existence.
Let's talk more about that chameleon nature. Those suitcase contents seem chosen for reinvention, right?
Absolutely. The clothes, makeup, wigs, they weren't just belongings. They felt like tools for transformation,
Yeah.
allowing her to become someone else.
And the wigs? 2, maybe 3. Short, dark brown or black, contrasting with her believed natural hair, which was longer, maybe chestnut.
Yes, that contrast is telling. It wasn't about subtle changes. It was about creating distinctly different looks, real disguise.
And the eyeglasses non-prescription, just plain glass, purely for altering her appearance.
Another small but significant detail showing her understanding of how to change how people perceive and remember her face.
Her clothing, 2 elegant but modest, practical, neutral colors, well-fitted, a disguise of normality almost, designed to blend in anywhere.
Exactly. Carefully chosen to avoid standing out, to be inconspicuous while still looking. Plausible, presentable.
In the hotel trail, at least 9 locations across Norway, maybe elsewhere in Europe too. Each time a different name, a different nationality claimed Belgian, French, Dutch.
It paints a picture of constant movement, constant reinvention, a nomadic life under a veil of deception.
And her behaviors in these hotels were consistent too, weren't they? Requesting rooms with balconies.
Yes, which could suggest wanting observation points, maybe awareness of surveillance.
Rarely making eye contact, removing labels from new things she bought, always paying cash.
All classic signs of wanting to remain unseen, untraced, off the official grid, minimizing her footprint.
The number of aliases is staggering. Fenella Lork, Claudia Tielt, Alexia Zarna-Merches, Vera Jarl, Genevieve Lancier, Elizabeth Lienhauer-Fur, Jensine Lenahoy, and maybe others, none of them real.
Each name a temporary construct, used and discarded, making her real self harder and harder to find.
And that coded notebook, tracking it all. O29P for Oslo,
Yeah.
shows such methodical planning.
Yes, it wasn't chaotic. It was highly organized deception. Suggests real control, real forethought.
And maybe the most telling thing, witness descriptions were all over the place.
Right, like she actively adapted her persona. Different heights, builds, hair colors, accents reported. A true chameleon.
So the inescapable conclusion is, she lived without a consistent identity for a long time. This feels more like a deliberate mission, a way of life, than just paranoia or running away.
It suggests purpose. Not just avoiding something, but actively being someone else, repeatedly. A sustained, curated existence.
Thinking about those inconsistent witness memories, again, polite but distant, elegant but plain, those shifting accents, it really paints a picture of someone consciously managing perceptions.
Absolutely. She seemed able to project different facets depending on the situation, making it almost impossible for anyone to get a consistent read on her true self.
But there were those few consistent threads, weren't there? Carrying bags, but not unpacking.
Yes, suggesting transience, maybe always ready to move.
Sudden checkouts, requesting those balcony or street-facing rooms.
Hinting at observation, maybe caution, maybe escape routes.
Avoiding eye contact. And that sense that her languages, while fluent, seemed learned, formal.
Right, like someone performing a role, not just naturally communicating.
Linguistic analysis backed that up, didn't it?
Yeah.
Fluent but formal French, maybe school-learned. English with a Germanic rhythm. Pronunciation slips.
Yes, the description, like someone playing the part of a tourist who didn't want to be noticed, is perfect.
Yeah.
It captures that sense of conscious performance.
And her clothes, elegant but neutral, travel-ready, well-fitted, but almost all labels removed. Only those faint manufacturing marks found, one possibly Italy, one maybe East Germany, led nowhere.
Again, meticulous effort to remove identifying information, even from clothing origins, blending in, leaving no trace.
And connecting this back to the Cold War context, this profile really does resemble descriptions of female operatives used during that era, doesn't it?
It does. The mobility, the anonymity, the ability to blend in these were valuable skills for intelligence work, and women were often used precisely for those reasons. They could sometimes move more freely, arouse less suspicion.
So it begs the questions. Was she a courier, carrying secrets, a handler, managing other agents, a defector, or just someone running from a completely different kind of danger?
These are the big possibilities. Each fit some pieces of the puzzle, but none fit perfectly, or at least none have definitive proof.
But the overall impression from her languages, clothes, behavior is someone trying to survive while disappearing, editing herself in real time, living a constructed lie.
A meticulously crafted illusion designed to conceal her true self and purpose, whatever that was.
Okay, so with no ID, no passport, no known friends or family, the investigation had to lean heavily on forensics.
Right. And the teeth, with that expensive, distinctive work, seems so promising. Gold, porcelain, that rare cement, pointing to Germany, Switzerland,
But
France,
ultimately, a dead end. No records matched.
highlighting just how effective her anonymity was. A key identifier led nowhere.
And the facial reconstruction, based on the skull, it showed this woman, mid-30s maybe, high cheekbones, strong nose, memorable features, you'd think.
You would. But circulating those sketches yielded nothing definitive. No one recognized her specifically enough to give a name. Another visual clue that didn't unlock the mystery.
Perhaps the most incredible forensic dead end. The fingerprints. Usable prints, but zero matches in any known database, national, international, visa, customs.
Which, for 1970, given how much she seemed to travel, is astonishing. It implies a deliberate, successful effort to avoid ever being fingerprinted by any official body.
What other little forensic clues were there?
Things we mentioned: trimmed nails, no hand calluses, so not manual labor, no surgical scars, no signs of childbirth, healthy, well-fed. An educated demeanor was inferred, but again, just fragments. A general picture without a specific identity.
It really feels like the investigation became less about solving a crime and more about decoding an erased message, right?
Yeah.
Where every absence, every odd detail was potentially significant.
Exactly. Deciphering a deliberate act of concealment, trying to reconstruct a life from misleading or missing pieces.
And those contradictory witness memories become even more puzzling in that light. Always alone, but looking different to everyone. Height, hair, age, accent.
Suggesting a remarkable ability to manipulate her appearance and the impression she made, a true chameleon.
Changing aliases sometimes overnight between cities emphasizes the planning, the intentionality.
It wasn't haphazard. It was a continuous, conscious effort to stay ahead, to remain untraceable, suggests vigilance, maybe training.
And that story, the agitated man in the Bergen cafe, supposedly waiting for her days before her death. The timeline didn't quite match her known hotel stays.
Right, which raises the possibility of hidden meetings, unknown contacts, maybe a whole parallel track of activity in her final days that we know nothing about.
Yeah.
Another layer of uncertainty.
So the haunting conclusion remains. Many people might have seen her briefly, but nobody knew her. She was a mirage, impossible to grasp, maybe due to fear, training, trauma, but ultimately wanting desperately to be unrecognizable.
Yes, the collective memory is just fleeting, contradictory glimpses, a person profoundly skilled at remaining unknown.
Let's look at her movements, that hotel trail, Bergen, Stavanger, Trondheim, back towards Bergen, Oslo. This seemed erratic, but maybe precise in its own way.
Possibly. It might look random to us, but she likely had her own logic. Maybe avoiding surveillance, maybe meeting contacts, maybe heading somewhere specific for reasons we don't know.
And her actions in those cities, the aliases, asking about ferries, buying those rubber boots.
Right, the boots are interesting. Suggests maybe planning to go somewhere off-track, outdoors, or just practical for Norwegian weather.
Wearing sunglasses indoors, the short stays, claiming various jobs she didn't have.
All behaviors of someone cautious, perhaps monitoring their surroundings, keeping details vague and inconsistent.
And the hotel staff descriptions remained inconsistent throughout, reinforcing that chameleon quality.
Yes, suggesting she consciously adapted her presentation for each new location.
So the pattern seems clear. Expertise in creating temporary personas, repeated vanishing acts. This was her modus operandi.
It suggests a practiced ability, not just a one-off escape, a sustained way of living underground, essentially.
Which brings us back to that core question. What kind of person trains themselves for this? To be a ghost and still end up found dead.
It's the fundamental riddle. Why build such an elaborate defense only for it to fail so catastrophically? Or did it fail? Was this ending somehow part of the plan, or a consequence she couldn't avoid?
This is where the spy theory really takes hold as a potential explanation, isn't it? Multiple aliases, lies, silence, a death that looks almost like protocol gone wrong.
It offers a framework that seems to fit many of the strange puzzle pieces. Espionage often involves exactly this kind of deep cover and anonymity.
And Norway's Cold War importance is critical here. Bordering the USSR, NATO exercises happening, submarine testing near Bergen. It was a key location.
Absolutely. A known playground for intelligence services from both sides. Espionage was a reality there.
And those anecdotal reports, seeing her with uniformed men, visiting military zones, posing as an antiques dealer, multiple fake passports claimed.
While unconfirmed, these stories feed directly into the spy narrative. An antiques dealer cover, for example, is classic tradecraft for observing locations or making contacts discreetly.
Plus, those declassified documents hinting at Norwegian intelligence interest, but also maybe being told by higher authorities to back off, to focus on suicide.
That raises serious questions about potential official knowledge or even interference. Were there forces wanting to keep this quiet?
And the official silence since then, no confirmation of intelligence links, but no flat denial either. That ambiguity often speaks volumes in these cases.
It leaves the door wide open for speculation. A clear denial would be expected if there was truly nothing there. The lack of one is suggestive.
So the spy theory could explain the aliases, the coded trail, the detachment, the vanishing, the isolated death, and why nobody claimed her. It ties a lot together.
It provides a coherent, if unproven, narrative that accounts for many of the most baffling elements of her life and death.
But even if she was a spy, who for? East, West, double agent, that remains completely unknown?
Yes, the who remains elusive. Was she working for Moscow, Washington, London, or someone else entirely? Or maybe freelance? The possibilities are vast within that world.
So, summing up the evidence pointing towards something more than a civilian death, it's the staged life resembling tradecraft.
Yes, the whole package, travel patterns, aliases, varying backgrounds claimed, antique dealers, saleswoman, none true.
The suspicious behaviors, wigs, languages, no fingerprints on forms, solitary balcony requests, late check-ins, early outs, room changes, all suggest surveillance awareness.
Classic evasion techniques.
Bergen's proximity to the Håkonsvern naval base, covert NATO operations nearby, adds context.
Geographic plausibility for intelligence activity.
So the possibilities within the spy theory: Western agent, Soviet courier, double agent, messenger,
Each carries different implications.
and the darker possibility: compromise and execution.
A cleanup. A grim reality in that line of work during the Cold War.
The lack of any agency claiming her could mean she was operating totally off-book, deniably.
Or perhaps her mission was so sensitive, acknowledging her was impossible even after death.
What about alternatives? Industrial espionage, smuggling, shadow economy.
Also, possibilities. They involve secrecy and risk, though perhaps not always state-level actors.
But the common thread remains: trained to disappear, yet ultimately found.
Why?
Did she fail? Or choose to stop?
That's the question. Did her skills desert her? Was she betrayed? Or did she reach a point where she couldn't or wouldn't maintain the facade?
That idea of her trying to leave the game is compelling. The erratic final movements being more visible in Bergen may be a sign of breaking pattern.
It's possible. Perhaps she was trying to get out, and that made her vulnerable or led to a confrontation.
And the police investigation itself. The official probable suicide conclusion feels unsatisfactory to many, including some original investigators who privately doubted it.
Yes, there's a persistent sense that the official conclusion might have been convenient, avoiding deeper, more dangerous questions. A message never meant to be read.
Which leads to that unease. Did institutions have reasons not to look too closely? Was the truth too complicated, too politically sensitive?
The possibility of institutional obfuscation, whether deliberate or just born of caution, hangs over the case.
We have to keep emphasizing Norway's Cold War context. Vital NATO member bordering the USSR. Espionage wasn't theoretical, it was happening.
Soviet trawlers, U.S. subs, monitored airfields, arrests. It was an active front.
And her documented presence near sensitive military sites, Kolsnes, Trondheim, missile testing, radar, witness accounts of her interest in military movements. Coincidence? Seems unlikely.
It provides strong circumstantial evidence linking her potential activities to strategically important locations. Very hard to dismiss.
And those reports of investigators being told not dig further, leads going cold, suggests interference.
It strongly implies external factors influencing the investigation, possibly linked to national security or intelligence interests.
Even recent investigations, like NRK's in 2017, had former intelligence people hinting at foreign connections. Still no official confirmation, but the whispers persist.
It suggests that within intelligence circles, the espionage angle was, and perhaps still is, considered a strong possibility.
The lack of official records linking her to an agency. Maybe not surprising for a Cold War agent designed to leave no footprint.
Exactly. Effective tradecraft often meant complete deniability, no paper trail.
So speculation continues. Did Norwegian authorities know more? Were they warned off? Did they fear complications? The stakes were high.
The potential for geopolitical fallout might have outweighed the need for a transparent investigation in their eyes.
We still have to acknowledge the simpler theory, abuse victim, fleeing, seeking isolation.
It's possible, but does it explain the wigs, the codes, the aliases, the apparent training? It seems less likely to account for that level of sophistication.
So the truth seems trapped between theories, maybe buried in things never shared by police, intelligence, or just lost to history.
Likely a complex mix, with crucial pieces deliberately hidden or simply unrecoverable now.
Thinking about the political climate again, 1970s Europe, continent of suspicion, Cold War fought everywhere. Norway, right on the front line.
That backdrop is essential. Espionage was pervasive.
And we listed the examples in Norway: trawlers, subs, arrests. It was real.
Definitely.
So the Isdal Woman's attributes, multiple identities, unknown origin, coded journal, hotel hopping, French fluency, travels near military sites, look highly suspicious in that context.
Her profile aligns remarkably well with espionage activity for that time and place.
Speculation on allegiance, Eastern Bloc, NATO, freelance trading info, observing tests, all plausible Cold War scenarios.
The possibilities are numerous within that framework.
And her methods, disguises, cache, obfuscation, seemed aligned with Western intelligence training, some suggest.
That's one interpretation, though not definitive proof of allegiance.
If she was a spy, her death becomes even more critical. A cleanup, a message, a botched suicide staging.
The manner of death raises disturbing questions about state-sponsored actions or extreme measures taken to silence her.
Or the courier theory, smuggling info, contraband, jewels, maybe even nuclear materials. A non-political but still dangerous motive for secrecy.
Yes, illicit trafficking could also explain the need for deep cover and the violent end.
But that enduring silence from the intelligence world, then and now. No claims, no whispers. Suggests powerful reasons for secrecy.
The silence itself is a significant piece of the puzzle. It implied something highly sensitive, something no agency wants to touch.
Which brings us to the official police conclusion. February 5, 1971, probable suicide. Fentanyl overdose, self-immolation, case closed.
A conclusion widely disbelieved, then and now.
By investigators, forensic analysts, journalists, the inconsistencies were just too great.
Exactly. The details just didn't align with typical suicidal behavior.
No fingerprints on bottles, removed jewelry, packed disguises, coded notebook, nobody knowing her. It screams something else.
It points away from a desperate, impulsive act and towards something far more calculated and complex.
So the suspicion remains strong. The case was closed because it was too hot to handle. Foreign intelligence hints, Cold War implications. Too dangerous.
That's a plausible explanation for the seemingly premature and unsatisfactory conclusion. Avoid the bigger, messier truth.
We heard that quote from Detective Hortons being told to stop because it was over our heads. Chilling confirmation of potential interference.
It strongly suggests that higher powers, for reasons unknown, did not want the investigation to proceed further down certain paths.
And her burial zinc-lined coffin, preserving the remains maybe, but in an unmarked grave. Anonymous to the end.
Even in death, her identity was kept hidden. The unmarked grave cemented her status as the unknown woman.
It makes you question when an investigation stops being about truth and starts being about performance. Avoiding implications. Burying uncomfortable possibilities.
It forces us to consider that sometimes the official narrative might prioritize stability or secrecy over a potentially disruptive truth.
For decades, the case went cold. Then the digital age, true crime interest. It came back.
Yes, renewed public fascination, especially driven by online communities and podcasts.
Like Death in Ice Valley by NRK and the BBC, that really pushed for modern forensics in 2016.
It did. It generated significant pressure to re-examine the evidence with new technology.
And that led to mitochondrial DNA analysis from a tooth. What did that show?
It suggested Southern European ancestry, possibly the Rhone region of France, but also with links to Eastern Europe. Tantalizing, but still broad.
An isotope analysis.
That suggested childhood adolescence in Central Eastern Europe, maybe the Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia border region. And it supported the idea of a nomadic adult life consistent with her travels. More pieces, fitting the pattern of international movement, but still no name.
Efforts in 2020 for full genomic sequencing hit a wall, right? Privacy laws.
Yes, European privacy laws restricted using public genealogy databases without a direct family match, a frustrating obstacle for identification.
But hope remains, maybe through open source genealogy, more cross-border cooperation.
There's always hope with advancing technology and collaborative efforts. Maybe one day, a match will be found.
And this modern focus has shifted the question for some, hasn't it? From who killed her to, Can we restore her identity?
And perhaps more profoundly, would she have wanted us to? Given her apparent efforts to remain unknown, it's an ethical dilemma.
Even with the case officially cold, new theories keep emerging, reinterpreting the evidence.
The mystery endures, and people keep trying to piece it together.
The intelligence theory remains strong. Her profile, visiting military sites, using dead people's names for hotels, a known training tactic.
And the silence, the off-record hints from intelligence circles, the circumstantial evidence is compelling.
The lack of official investigation into espionage links, the refusal to reclassify the death, still raises eyebrows.
It fuels suspicions that authorities might know more or are reluctant to open that particular Pandora's box.
Could the silence even indicate official complicity in maintaining it? A darker thought.
It's a suspicion that lingers, that the silence isn't just passive, but maybe active maintenance of secrecy.
So the final thought on this track. She moved like someone trained, died like someone erased. In the Cold War context, truth itself might have been buried.
Her story is a stark reminder of that hidden world where identities were disposable and truth was often a casualty of the larger game.
Reflecting on it all, it's just remarkable and sad that her identity remains unknown after 50-plus years of effort.
It truly highlights the effectiveness of her anonymity, whether self-imposed or enforced, and the limits of investigation when faced with such deliberate erasure.
What profile can we build? Educated, multilingual, well-traveled, independent, cautious, private but not unfriendly, comfortable but not rooted, European, maybe German-French, signs of wealth or state access, planning evident.
A capable, enigmatic individual, someone who knew how to navigate the world discreetly.
But the core question remains, what was she protecting so fiercely?
That's the ultimate mystery. What secret was worth constructing and ultimately perhaps sacrificing a life for?
Hiding from someone, working for someone, choosing the shadows, radical self-erasure. The possibilities are broad.
Each paints a different potential tragedy, a different motivation for her extraordinary life.
And her death betrayal. Self-orchestrated, fear, calm execution, still shrouded in uncertainty.
A final moments remain speculative, adding to the enduring enigma.
And that uncertainty underscores the human tragedy. We don't know her real voice, her real story. But she was a person, not just a case file.
Absolutely. Behind the mystery was a unique individual whose life ended anonymously. That's the core tragedy.
It's amazing how her story still grips people globally, despite the lack of answers.
It speaks to our fascination with the unknown, our desire to solve puzzles, especially ones involving human identity and secrecy.
Does the lack of closure offer a strange comfort, allowing us to project narratives spy, fugitive, survivor?
Perhaps. The ambiguity allows her to be many things to many people, reflecting our own interests and anxieties about the hidden parts of the world.
But collective memory shifts, doesn't it? The story can drift from the truth if there are no facts to anchor it.
That's the danger. Myth can overtake reality without solid answers. It underscores the need for critical thinking.
So, what does her story teach us? That intentional disappearance is possible. That systems struggle to track the untraceable. That nameless stories become myths, that silence around death can reflect silence in life.
It offers profound lessons about identity, anonymity, the limits of systems, and the enduring power of secrets.
And maybe the final thought should be, she was a person whose identity was forgotten. Have we focused too much on the mystery and not enough on the individual?
It's a crucial point. At the heart of this fascinating enigma is a human being whose story deserves to be known, whose name deserves to be restored, if possible.
So we end where we began, really, with the central mystery. The woman with many names, but no name at all, found in the Ice Valley.
Her image, lying there in that remote spot, remains incredibly powerful and haunting.
We've traced her actions. The false identities, the languages, the specific hotel requests, the cash payments, leaving no trace, and then that bizarre, fiery end.
A life lived deliberately in the shadows, ending in deeply mysterious circumstances that continue to defy easy explanation.
We've revisited the theories. Spy, criminal, someone fleeing, maybe officialdom obscuring the truth.
A complex web of possibilities, none proven, all contributing to the enduring fascination.
Modern DNA tests remain inconclusive. The mystery holds.
Highlighting the success of her anonymity, or the efforts made to ensure it.
Her story tells us about living outside the frame, the choice of anonymity, the effectiveness of wanting to be unfound.
It challenges our assumptions about identity and traceability in the modern world.
But those human questions linger. Her final hours, her true motivations. What really happened?
The lack of answers about her final moments leaves a void, a space for endless speculation, and a deep sense of unresolved tragedy.
Yet, despite her efforts to be forgotten, the Isdal woman resonates. Her story compels us to look deeper, to remember the human beneath the enigma.
Her enduring presence in our collective curiosity shows that even erased lives leave echoes.
She might have sought silence, but in that silence she made the world whisper, a testament to the power of an unanswered question and the value of a life, however unknown.
Her silence has ironically amplified her story, making her a lasting symbol of the unknown, a haunting reminder of a life lost to secrecy.